This is something that actually came to me. I've not written it down, but we all know Montreal. We know the story. It's been told a billion times before from the perspective of Brett. I wrote about it from the perspective of Owen as he was conflicted, but Vince offered him a lot of money to stay and that kind of thing. What was Davey's perspective as far as Montreal? Because he paid, I think eventually it was $100,000, and then WCW fronted half of that, so he really only paid like 50 to get out of his contract and leave. But what was Davey's reaction that he wasn't maybe fought over as much as Owen was to stay and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I know Davey's initial reaction was he was very loyal to Brett. He was upset at the screw job, and what Vince had perpetrated. He just saw this as a tremendous betrayal of Brett, who was their top star, and Davey followed suit, and he said, well, if they're going to do this to Brett, then I don't want to stay in the company any longer, and basically asked out of his contract. And Davey had just, I think, a few months before had re-signed, a long-term deal for 2 or 3 years. And basically, to be released from that, he had to pay like $100,000 fee to get out of the contract. But he was very loyal, and he just decided he didn't want to remain in the WWF any longer if Brett was no longer there. So what he did was out of loyalty to Brett, and he no longer desired to stay in the company. And that was unfortunate because when he went to WCW, things didn't go as well there for him, for a variety of reasons. But I don't think they capitalized on him as well. They didn't utilize his drawing power as well, and he'd been overcome with some injuries as well. But initially, though, that was his decision. He was standing behind Brett all the way, and wasn't going to be swayed. He resigned from WWE and even paid the penalty to get out of his contract to go to WCW, and just unfortunate things didn't go very well there for him.
Yeah, I actually interviewed Alex Wright, so we've got there's a video out there about Alex Wright talking about the Trapdoor incident and how no one was actually told, or from Alex's perspective, no one in that match was told about the Trapdoor. Something else that's always struck me as a bit odd is that how come Vince gave Bulldog the option to leave with a 6-figure penalty, get out of his contract, but not Owen?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think Owen initially wanted out of his contract as well. I mean, Owen was upset about what happened to Brett as well. But I don't think he had as strong a desire to go to WCW. I think if Vince had released him, he would have gone. But Owen was apprehensive about going to WCW. He had gone there sort of on a trial basis a few years before that, did some TV matches, and wasn't happy with how things went. They just seemed disorganized, and everything was sort of focused on maybe Hulk and Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, and
it was before then. It was this Bulldog, or was this Owen you're talking about? Sorry, because Owen was there about 1990.
Well, sort of Owen, but I think he was worried that he'd be kind of lost in the shuffle, and what would they do with Owen if they went there, and he was apprehensive about going there. Davey, I think, thought, and Davey had already had some pretty successful runs with WCW and was pretty sure that he could do well there, and I think he wanted to be with Brett.
He was friends with Hulk as well, wasn't he, Davey? He was quite close with Hulk.
Yeah, he was, and so, he had gone back and forth between WWE and WCW a few times, but, this incident with Brett was kind of the final straw for Davey, and he quit basically out of protest. Owen wasn't sold on going to WCW. He wasn't convinced they would have a spot or a role there for him. And as hard as the traveling was with WWE and the lifestyle, he was comfortable there. Aside from what had happened with Brett, and and so he initially asked for his release, but Vince, I think, sort of had some idea, well, if I keep Owen here, I'm not going to keep Davey. Davey's pretty much adamant that he wants to be released, and he's not going to stay here no matter what I offer him. So and he just felt there can be a storyline for Owen, if he stays here, as Brett's brother, who wants to avenge, Shawn Michaels and Triple H and whoever else was sort of behind the skullduggery of the screw job. And then that was becoming pretty clear to all the fans what was going on, especially with the documentary that came out, Wrestling with the Shadows with Brett, so I think Vince thought Owen could be capitalized on in a storyline as the one lone heart who remains with the WWF and carries on without Brett. So he upped Owen's guarantee, signed him to a new contract, offered him more money. I don't know exactly what he was making, but he's going to be making a lot more money than before. And
well, I can actually quote that. Almost quote it. I wrote it in the book. It was a few years ago. I think Owen had actually been bumped up, even though he didn't ask for it. He'd been bumped up to something like somewhere between 350 and 450. He may have been 450, so he was in amongst the top 10 paid guys in the WWF at the time. So even though Vince had him under contract, he thought, sweeten the pot, keep Owen happy. And I believe that Owen had also, I might be getting my timelines wrong, it was a few years since I wrote the book, but it was something like he'd just maybe bought a plot for a new house to be built on as well. That's so right. He needed that security.
Yeah, so it was either stay with the company that screwed your brother, basically, but you yourself might have a good future with, So I think that was a heavy decision for Owen because he loved being with Brett, and they had a great run as the New Heart Foundation, and it was really unfortunate because there's so much untapped potential there with Brett and Davey and Owen working with Steve Austin and DX and all the other factions they had in the WWE at that time. Ken Shamrock, all these guys, and they were doing great business with this Canada versus America rivalry, So and it's really unfortunate that was all kind of lost. That was jeopardized. But I think for Owen, it meant he was going to be making more money, and WWE just seemed more stable to him. So he reluctantly made that decision to stay behind with WWE. And like you said, he had just committed to building a new house, and he had 2 kids basically that he wanted to support. And I think for Owen, he didn't want this instability where he has to go to WCW and not know what they've got planned there. And they just seemed very disorganized and weren't using a lot of their talent well, even though they were paying outrageous guarantees. He didn't want to get lost in the shuffle there. So, he chose to remain with WWF. And I think, in Owen's defense, he just wanted a stable 3-4 more years, and then he could maybe retire, and make enough money that he, could retire and spend more time with his kids, and for Davey, on the other hand, he thought it would be a good career move, and he could no longer stay and work for the company that had betrayed Brett, and unfortunately, it turned out to be a disappointment for Davey.